So in Silat, every teacher teaches according to their understanding and knowledge, right? So Guru Ma said that once you have, because the body reveals the body in Silat. So what I mean by that is that represents the krambe, the claw. That represents the knife. That represents the golok. And that represents the sword. And the sword is taken from there. That's how long the sword is roughly. Okay? And you have double sword and single sword. So those are the male weapons, right? So that's 4. Then you have 3 cloths. You have the destar, the salendang, and the sarong. And the sarong deals with ground. The salendang deals more with the middle part of the body, right? And the destar deals with the upper part of the body. Okay. So we have 7, right? But I've learned lots of different weapons from different teachers. Okay. So, but what Guru Ma said, which I liked, which is true, is that if you master these 7, you can master anything. The cloths are harder than the fixed weapons. They're very, very complicated, even the way that we put them on. So, for example, this one, called the destar, it will be down, and the way we wrap it has to be put on, and the way you take it off has to be a certain way. And learning, you see, learning these complex maneuvers, they appear like nothing, but they're teaching you lots more. So it's like the ancient tea ceremonies in Japan, you know, or Zen meditation. So initially you think you're not learning much. You're not learning how I put this cloth on. But then later on you go, wow, this is really, really, in a sense, it's kind of enhanced my skill. It's enhanced my awareness. You know, it's like doing isolation work because you're learning how to use just your tendons in your fingers. And it's a very, very detailed way of training. And the difference between Guru Ma and all my other teachers is that they didn't have the detail that she had. So even though she was old and wasn't really practicing, she was like a customato, if you understand. Her knowledge was like, I've never met anyone who's had that kind of knowledge for detail. The way you step, the way the tendons interrelate to the joints, how to open the joints, the way the breath connects with the energy centers, where the energy flows. Very, 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 very detailed. So when I trained in Indonesia with all my other teachers, it was very much like learning short jurus, short forms, sparring, fighting, standard martial arts training. Do you know what I mean? You know, partner work, sparring, just very standard. When I trained with Guru Ma, it's a completely different world. It was holistic, connected to everything, how you stood. Was the earth living and active, the way you greeted the earth? Making a relationship with the earth, that's why we greeted the earth. Learning that everything has a subtle relationship, the trees, the plants, the earth, all relates together. Learning this language. It's just a completely different, do you see my point? You know, it's a completely different thing. You know, it's hard to put into words. You know, that's why when people say to me, Silat doesn't really justify what I felt I learned from Guru Ma. You know, she gave me a complete education, therapies. Like, for example, in the Silat that I teach, you have a complete therapeutic system. You learn how the muscles, the tendons, the bone, the energy flows, and how to repair it. So, you know, it's very vast, very vast.
Okay. So, there's reasons why we're using the hand. A few roundhouses, we're also using it to strike and grab. See it? Let's and grab. See it? So this roundhouse, that also brings someone straight down. You feel that shit?
Yeah.
Just explain to them a little bit.
Straight away your nervous system wants to go down.
Collapse.
Yeah. Straight away the shock.
Yeah. So there is finger conditioning exercises, but this is used for grabbing parts, and this part here is used for hitting.
In Silat, you have something called sikap, right? And sikap relates to postures, okay? In the old way of learning Silat, you would learn postures would carry the information. So that is all over Southeast Asia. If you look at the Thai arts, they have postures. The postures carried the information. Those postures were normally inscribed in temples. Okay, that was the standard way. When that knowledge disappeared, then styles were birthed. Styles, monkey style, this style, but that didn't really exist. So for example, if I put my hand out like that, that's long range. When I turn it, becomes closer, okay? Turn it back in, becomes closer. Turn it back in, becomes closer, until this. Okay? You see here, 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 here. Those are the ranges. So you would go from longer range to mid-range to shorter range to suffocating space. All right? So in Silat, the environment is really, really important. Okay? So for example, how you step is determined by what ground you're on. So if me and you were in winter and it was slippery, it was icy, your mechanics, my mechanics would change. So you adapt. You're always adapting to the environment. The body learns how to adapt. In Silat, the body is called, it's living and breathing. It's consciously aware. We don't say, I'm aware, my body is therefore not aware, or I'm aware and parts of my body are aware. We don't say that. We say in Silat, we trust consciousness, concentration exists both in mind and in the body. You know, and when people say, well, where is that? Well, when you're stressed, where do you feel it? When there's sensation, where do you feel it? You feel it in the body, right? So in Silat, you're constantly learning how to kind of enter now, the present, as in what environment you're in. So that's constantly changing. Because that's constantly changing, your body's constantly adapting. If I fight someone that's 6'6" and 5'7", I can't apply this to this. You cannot. Everything changes, his reach changes, you have to adapt. Okay? So that's where we rely on something called rasa. Rasa in Silat means instinct. Okay? So instinctively I learn how to trust the sensation of the body and adapt to what is required. This is a huge part of Silat and starts from the beginning. So fixed, rigid formations are never taught. You know, fixed, I'm going to do this, we throw it away. You know, you're suddenly in a position where there's two guys, the posture changes. One-on-one, the posture changes. The environment changes, the posture changes. You know, so it's constantly changing. You know, I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes, it makes sense.
Yeah, but it's something that a lot of students find hard in the beginning because they're used to mechanical, rigid postures that they have used for 10 years. And I've said to them, I always say this, look, it's going to be hard at the beginning, but it will make complete sense. So that how we train this, right, is we have something called jurus, jurusan, sasaran. The sasaran is the arena of sparring, and that's constantly changing. So you might fight on the floor, you might fight upright, you might fight under a table, you might fight with ropes, you might fight with 2 guys, 3 guys. And then you have a sasaran director who directs the sasaran. So, you know, it's not like when I used to fight before, you knew roughly what weight category, who you were fighting, what the mats were like, the referee, how to nick around, how to rest, all that stuff, that goes out the window in Silat. You know, it's uncomfortable all the way through. You know, sometimes when the sasaran director feels that you need to go on the ground, he'll keep you on the ground for 3 months. If he feels that you cannot deal with closed environments, he'll keep you enclosed, you know. And so you're learning how to adapt all the time, you know. And this is what I found, for me, the most interesting part of Guru Ma's journey, because she said to me, every 24-hour cycle is completely unique. You cannot, what you held on to yesterday, you cannot hold on to today. And I was thinking, that's exactly what I was looking for, because when I was living in Stonebridge growing up and I'd fight one guy and I, you know, did well against him, the next guy, it didn't work. And I was like, but I applied this worked, it didn't work against him. A roundhouse, ferocious roundhouse kick that put one guy down, the next guy wouldn't even flinch. So all of this was leaving huge gaps in my mind, you know. I was like, well, and I found out even in my everyday life, apart from fighting, everyday life, you can't apply yesterday's bread to today. So this teaching of adapting, shaping, forming into the present is what really, is what cut it for me, you know. And I think that in really original Silat, that's the entrance into the art. Throw away yesterday, adapt to now. Guru Ma calls this the body awakens, you know. Now, look, living in Western societies, right, is much harder because when you need something, you go on the internet, you go to the doctors. I've lived in Asia. I've traveled 11 years continuously, backwards and forwards. Sometimes I had to journey from village to village at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And sometimes these villages are like out in, there's very few light, you can't see. So adapting what I knew in London wouldn't work there. So I had to use this teaching in Indonesia. You know, the terrain changes all the time. We would train in certain places, and all of a sudden you were up and down mountains into a valley, and all of a sudden it was just slippery. You couldn't apply what you applied in London. And I realized this kind of teaching is more alive in Asia, where it's less controlled. It's more jungle, you know. Whereas here, we control everything, you see. But I'm still able to use this teaching here. It's helped me enormously deal with everyday situations, you know.
1, upper strike, 2, strike, pin, change pin. Now, just going to take him back here, and here we're going to step over the arm, here, and step into kuching. Now, this is what we would call a pin. Now, the moment he tries to move, look what happens. There's a pin and a wrist lock. So look, so from this first movement, we're going to go for a finish. There's the harimau break, and here is the second wrist lock, just in here. So look, from the kuching break, you can feel that?
Yep.
On the elbow.
On the elbow.
If you try and move, I've got a wrist lock too. So now he's here, yeah. Now he's here, now we have a pin, but now, watch as from kuching, I'm going to turn into wire position. Yeah, you feel that?
Yeah.
So look, kuching and wire. Now what that does, it gives me an opportunity to slide and hit. So I'm not just in a pin position, I can also move in a wire position and hit. Let's come up. 1, strike, 2, lolok, pin. Lolok, pin. This time I'm going to step that way. So I'm going to step, there's the break, but now watch what happens. I'm going to turn into wire position. You feel that?
Yep.
Stuart, now, that position there gives me what I call a full control. You see that? Yeah. It's a pin. Try and get your arm out of that.
Nothing.
You can't.
No.
Yeah. So, you see that position there is then very easy for me to apply a wrist lock. Yeah. You see it? Mm-hmm. You can't really get out of that. No. And then if I move again, you see if I move again here, that if I twist this way, yeah, it's very easy for me then to apply that pin. You see it? Or bang, a neck break. So I'm controlling the shoulder and the hand.
This is a huge one for Silat, and I'm glad you asked this question, because we go through the muscle structure first, and that takes 3 years. So there are postures. Remember I said the postures, the sit-ups. The ground conditioning in Silat is tough. You know, it is tough. I mean, I get MMA guys training it, and they find it tough. You know, so the first 3 years is all about conditioning, and it's really, really repetition, hard. It's hard. You know, you've done jiu-jitsu. You know how hard it is to train on the ground, right? It's like that. It's constant all the time, hard, up, down, up, down, up, down. And as you get more and more attuned with it, the muscles relaxed. We then call this the tendon phase. So the second part of the conditioning is all about letting go of the muscles and using the tendons effectively. And then the next part of is the bones. We condition the bones. So we go from muscle to tendon to bones. And what we're looking for in the tendon and the joints is space. Can you see space? Like I'm 50 now, right? So I've still got space in all my joints, which means that energy can flow, which means they can breathe, right? So we do a lot of bone exercises. Then we condition the breath. And then after the breath, we condition what we call the subtle energy in the body. And this you learn through a dance called Kembangan. I don't know if you've seen it before. I've seen some of it. Yeah, Kembangan. Yeah, it's a very, very, very internal. It's very internal because the posture's got to be right. You know, the transference of weight's got to be right. The breath's got to be controlled at a certain level. So this is the very internal side of what I do. So it's a holistic conditioning. You know, like I said, the beautiful thing about Silat is that you never think that you never feel like you're getting tight. You're loosening up. Everything's expanding. You know, your spine is constantly like living and bright. You know, some people say, I get that doing Tai Chi. I said, so when my Tai Chi friends talk to me about their manifestations, I know what they mean. You know, I never feel like my body is getting tight ever. I always feel it's the opposite. I always feel that my posture's improving, that my hips are opening, etc. So the conditioning really is to take you away from the muscles and bring you back to your essence, so that you can use your essence in every day. So it's activating your essence, really. That's really what the whole Silat journey is about.